Well, good afternoon, Mayor Bowser.
Good
Thank
afternoon.
You for,
it's my pleasure.
Joining us in this wonderful spring day. I'm not sure that all of you all know in the audience that both the mayor and I are fifth-generation Washingtonians. And in fact, I wanted to be the mayor one day, but I got to be around 25 or 30 years old, and I figured out I would never vet. I would never pass a background test. So I went into the real estate business, and when I got in, there were no rules. So it's good to see you this morning. And someone made a comment about my sneakers, and so I'm trying to be very cool. I've got a 20-year-old who plays college basketball, yeah. And he reveres you. And I told him that I was coming this morning, and he said, "Dad, you gotta rock the Jordan 11s."
I love it.
And I said, so let's start off and talking really about the city, and I'm going to live vicariously through you for a minute. Tell me, what's the best thing about being the mayor of the best city in the country?
The best city in the world. The best thing. Well, as you know, Ernie, we are unique in the system in the United States. We're not quite a city, not quite a state. The mayor is responsible for the public schools, public safety, Medicaid, all the things that states are. And so I would say the best thing is you can literally have an idea in this town, work the idea, get it funded, and implement it in less than 1 year, in one budget cycle. Because our system is flat, 14 people with ideas help get things done in this city.
That is wonderful. Because I really do believe that it is the best city in the country and most powerful in the world. So as a native of the city, I couldn't be more proud of the job that you're doing.
Thank you.
Let's talk about what's going on downtown. We're at this beautiful Class A asset at 2000 Penn. And the other day when I dropped my keys going to lunch, I looked down one way at K Street and there was no one there. And I looked down the other and there was no one at K Street at 1230. So, Mayor, how do we convey to the business community and the community at large that DC is open? We're ready to invite people to come back downtown. How do we incent people? How do we spread that message?
Well, DC is open, and part of what you're doing does that, because I'm convinced that after 2 years of doing something one way, habits form, people's ways of life change, how they take care of their families themselves. All of that has kind of gotten cemented over the last 2 years. So undoing that experience is going to take new experiences. And so I have suggested to employers to do what we did. I'm an employer, 37,000 DC government employees. We went back last year. We went back in June. We gave our employees enough time, but we also built in more flexibility than we ever had, allowing more people to telework more days. But we did set the government standard, the company standard, that we have to serve our employees and we have to serve our residents rather, and we can only do that best in most cases in person. So we have more flexibility, but leading up to that, we sponsored a lot of events. A lot of ways for people to get on the trains, come in the office, see that they could work safely at the office and have that experience. But likewise, I was on K Street yesterday at 5:30. I saw a lot of people, and I was pretty excited. We were in a newly renovated space. We were at a bank 2 days ago. Chase opened their regional headquarters in DC, a beautifully renovated building. And another thing that I know employers will be thinking about, and Class C property owners, is how people want to use the space when they get there. And I asked them, and I've asked some others, what is your research showing you? What is your employee feedback telling you about how people want to work? In Chase's case, they went to almost 100% hoteling layout. And I've seen it a few places now, so I know it's catching on. It looked more like a lounge than an office. And so people were feeling excited about coming back. So flexibility, making sure when you have the opportunity to redo spaces to react to what people are telling you and telling you how they want to work, and give them opportunities to come in. before, if they haven't. I just can't believe people haven't come in yet, but some people haven't, to experience how to get to work, how to be at work, and how to do it safely. And for our part, as the government at large, we think that our discussions on the federal level are important. A big user, of course, of office space in the district are federal government employees. I pushed the administration very, very hard to have the president be the voice of the return. Pushing it down to the secretary by secretary level we think is problematic, and having the president really advance the return to work, not just in our downtown, which has a bigger impact, but everywhere, because we will see that will be, the federal government can be the leader for the private sector employers who want to come back.
That's right. If any of you all have contacts with the president, text him and then say, the mayor says to come back to work downtown. Let me keep on with that thinking. Mayor, you talked a lot about converting office buildings to residential uses, especially downtown. What's the feedback been from local developers? Has your administration and DMPAD thought about incentives to kind of spark the action of developers to convert vacant offices to residential?
Absolutely. So we know, not just in the downtown, but in other corridors as well, some of our buildings, Class C buildings or other buildings, even before the pandemic, we know folks were thinking about how those buildings could be repositioned. We have lots of areas in the city where there's new competition, new building space, and so we see tenants moving around. So we know that the thoughts about how to reposition some buildings have been underway and continue to be underway. So what I asked our team to do, to say, if the government could partner in some way, incentives, I say partner in some way. If the government could partner in some way, where would we get the biggest bang? How could we enliven a corridor or several corridors? How can we help a corridor that has been most decimated, their restaurants and retail? And what area, if we were involved and gave it a little push, it could spark it faster. So I anticipate, we did a request for ideas. We got some ideas back, and we want people to continue to send ideas. Let us know, unsolicited even, that you have an idea, and this is how the government can be involved to make that idea pop. But we will pick an area to concentrate our investments in, to get more residents, and to help enliven the business corridors there as well. What we know, and we can see in some other areas in the city where there were more residents in retail and restaurants, they did very well during the pandemic. Even in some of our more established corridors where a lot of people live, I look at some of the restaurants near where I live that never had lunchtime traffic. And during the pandemic, they had lunchtime traffic, and they had their takeout and delivery and margaritas and taco boxes, you name it, gave them a new way to support their neighbors. So now those same people, they're still spending money. We know they're spending a lot of it on food, at grocery, and at restaurant. Now we just need them back supporting our commercial corridors.
I agree. I have had too many taco boxes and margaritas recently, so I'm glad I'm back downtown. Let me turn to affordable housing. You have been quite a champion of affordable housing throughout the District of Columbia. I think in the 2023 budget, you inserted $500 million for the Housing Production Trust Fund. You had a bold initiative of saying that you're creating 36,000 units by 2025, 12,000 of those to be affordable. How's it going? Number one, and number two, what are the challenges that your team is trying to figure out? Three, Mayor, how can the real estate community be helpful to you in that endeavor?
Oh, so many ways. So from my vantage point, it's going great. And I want to just kind of give you the context. When I became mayor, the city was investing, I think, something like $60 or $7 million in our Housing Production Trust Fund. I pledged that we would do, no matter what, $100 million every year. And it was a fight. People don't remember that. Now that when we talk about $100 million a year in affordable housing, people's like, it's baked in. Isn't that great? What else you got? But they don't remember. I do very well. It was a big fight with the city council to say, hey, yeah, we'll do $100 million. The fight was, well, you're not going to use it. Well, blah, blah, blah. But what we have shown is if the government says that we're going to be a consistent partner, the private sector will get ready to be our partner. They'll go out to look for opportunities. They'll get their own infrastructure, up so that when the opportunities arrive, that they can deliver. And so that's what we've seen. Every year that we put out a solicitation for our Housing Production Trust Fund dollars, we have at least 2 times as many, sometimes 3 times as many applications for the money. So we know that the demand is there, the opportunities are there, our private sector partners are there to build and to make sure that we can create these units. So we just need to consistently provide our end. So we did 100 million, 100 million, 100, 6 times, so for 6 straight years. In the 7th year, we were able to do 400 million. So already we can meet commitments for $1 billion in subsidy towards affordable housing to help us get there. And the council, they just had their initial vote. We asked them for 500 million. They gave us I think 450, 460, so we'll take it and put it to work on building affordable housing. But what's next? What's next? Because we know doing that, we know costs are going up. All of you, everybody in the construction world is telling me it's going to cost more, interest rates are going up, supply chains are making things take longer. So every one of these units is going to cost more in the next years. So we have to maintain or increase our commitment, but we also have to find ways to do it more cheaply, more sustainably, in different places. And part of that, we just have a structural limitation in our city that at some point, I've always said this, at some point we have to examine outside of our monumental core how we can do more. And I'm committed to that discussion in the next 4 years.
I think that's a great initiative because in some parts of our community, it doesn't obstruct the historic nature of the skyline of the city. And that could be more housing. So I think the real estate, I know the real estate community will support you because we get to develop more buildings.
But also you get to create more housing. And the thing that I know about DC, and it has changed a lot in our lifetime, some very good in that we're now a safer city, we have better schools, we have a tax base that allows us to make really historic investments in human services and schools and parks and recreation. Those are the good things. The tough things are that's out of the reach for a lot of people. So closing that gap and make sure we're creating more jobs for DC residents that pay good wages so that more people can afford a great life in DC. That's why we do this.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned public safety and crime. When Bisnow started to market this presentation this morning or this meeting, I got a number of texts from people saying, ask the mayor about public safety.
Yep.
And you alluded to, it's very different than when we grew up. Back then, it was the Wild Wild West. This seems very tame. A lot of mayors are grappling with crime across the country. What is it that the District of Columbia can convey to its residents and people who come to work here about public safety?
Well, it has emerged, I think, as a remnant of COVID and being locked down for 2 years. That's why you see a national discussion in major cities and small towns about increased public safety. So part of having a safer DC or a safer US at this point is getting back to normal. I believe that in my soul. People getting back to work, people getting back to school, more people getting engaged in their services will help everybody make better decisions out there. And we're seeing, crimes that just, they have no rhyme or reason. There are people who are living on the edge that have guns, and it's creating a lot of problems. But for our part, you also have a mayor who's very worried about it, and I consider it our #1 issue. I wake up thinking about it, work with our chief of police on it, work with the council members on it to make sure we have all of the tools that we need. We're getting there. We're getting back to the number of police officers after 2 years of not being able to hire. We'll be able to hire again. And we're also very focused on the people who we think are causing the most trouble. And it's relatively few people, but problems. And so we want to make sure we can engage them, get them the services that they need, one way or the other.
That's great, and I hope that the council will pass, I think it was $20 to $30 million you put in the budget this year to hire 4,000 more officers, so I'm optimistic about that.
To get to 4,000 over several years. But what we've asked them specifically was for $30 million to hire 347. That's what we can do safely in 1 year, to retain 300. And if we're able to do that, that'll get us to the sustainable level. And I always tell people, you don't have to believe me when I say 4,000, but remember Kathy Lanier? Like, believe her. She said we needed 4,000 in this town. We've only gotten bigger. We have more activities in more places and more people who are living on the edge with more guns. So that's a formula for making sure we have the enforcement we need, but we also have the prevention services in place that we need.
Well, maybe we can draft her back from the NFL. Let me ask you this about economic development. There's so many impressive economic development projects taking on across the city. We have two of the best waterfronts in the world now. You've got RFK, you've got Hill East, you've got Reeves Center. You've got places all across the city in every ward and every community. Talk to us a little bit about some of your favorite economic development projects. Maybe favorite, it's not the right word, but what do you think of the projects that will have the most material impact to all the residents of the city?
Well, I like them all. I don't know that I have a favorite, but we have some that we've unstuck. And so I put them in my favorite category. When I became mayor, there was literally nothing happening at St. Elizabeth's. And now it is. And we went in first in making a pretty big investment in building a sports complex there for the Washington Mystics. They're now world champions, Washington Mystics. But that initial investment, us going in with the Mystics, doing infrastructure work, now we have housing. I just went there to cut a ribbon on for sale housing in Ward 8. A woman who's a nurse who worked on the front lines during this pandemic is now going to be a new Ward 8 homeowner. Whitman Walker is building a new clinic there, so we're bringing services closer to people. And we will deliver a new hospital there. That is transformational. New library. It's going to be like a town center in Ward 8. And I put it among my favorites because a lot of people had counted it out and said we couldn't get tenants, said people would be interested, and it's happening. Skyland Town Center in Ward 8 is Ward 7 is another one. 5 mayors have worked on it. I'll be the last because we broke ground on a new grocery store, the first one in Ward 7 in 20 years, first new grocery. Can you imagine that? There's some places here where we're cutting a ribbon on a grocery store every other month. This was the first one in Ward 7 in 20 years. You'll know why Walter Reed is a favorite of mine. I've worked on it since I was a council member, and it is just the community really loves the plan that we worked on together. It'll deliver a new Whole Foods at the end of next year, new pool, housing for seniors, housing for people exiting homelessness, a new school. So it has all of those things happening. The final one I'll mention is McMillan. Sarosh will appreciate this. And I mention McMillan because my mom, I grew up not far from there. And every time I drive down North Capitol Street with my mom, she would go, when are they going to do something about that place? And I was like, well, I'm the they now, Mom, and we're working on it. So we knew that deal, and that allowed us, it gave us a lot of things to solve, how we work with the community, how the comp plan demonstrates what the city's intentions are, making sure we have enough lawyers at OP and at zoning, you name it. We have tackled it in dealing with that project. And I'm just proud that represents another thing that has been unstuck, that is going to bring housing, it's going to bring a beautiful park and more opportunities for jobs for DC residents. So you're right, there are opportunities across all 8 wards that are happening now, but what's really exciting is what can happen in the future. And I look at Friendship Heights as one of those very interesting things that COVID has wiped it out. And as somebody who spent every Christmas Eve going to the Lord & Taylor's, over to, to the mall and maybe getting some food at Cheesecake Factory, it's sad to me. Like, it's really sad. I feel sad that we've lost that. And a lot of people have that experience. But we have the opportunity now to just totally rethink it and bring it back differently. Take advantage of opportunities to use all that space better, to do better with transportation, to do better with affordable housing, and to better integrate on both sides, really, the DC side and the Maryland side, with the community. So I'm excited about that.
Mayor, let me ask you this, because we have a good crowd of real estate professionals, how can the private sector, specifically the real estate community, be supportive of your initiatives and partner with the district more? All boats rise. And so I know that you like to partner with the business community. What can we do, people who have some influence in P&Ls and vision for development? And if you want to dovetail that with, I get a lot of questions about what's going to happen at RFK. The federal government controls it. Mm-hmm. If the feds give it to the city and you have a clean palette, is there a vision there to do what with it, or is that still unfolding?
It's still unfolding. It's a tough project. It's a very political. We have a lease through Events DC with the Department of the Interior, National Park Service specifically. And we just keep working to get control of the land. In order for us to invest city dollars in it, we need control of it for longer than what our lease allows, 99 years preferably, or we would want to buy it outright. And we need this restriction lifted. Right now, there's a use restriction at RFK that makes it only usable for recreational purposes. So we can't invest the type of money in the infrastructure with that restriction. So what we will want, and we have 2 scenarios. Events DC did a big community engagement process to develop these. One of it is a beautiful mixed-use development with housing, recreation, commercial uses, engagement with the Anacostia, as you mentioned, that we have been able to do more of, and we want to continue to do. Ball fields, it will also have the new indoor sports complex that the city will fund for gymnastics, indoor track, you name it, something that we really don't have in our DPR portfolio right now. The second scenario has all of that plus an NFL stadium. So that is how we're proceeding. My view is this. I personally feel that the issues with the team will be resolved, and they have some issues. I think that's inevitable. I think that the Commanders will also play in DC again. I also think that's inevitable. So we have to work on it, but what is a fact and for sure is that we will develop RFK for our needs, and we can't let it sit like that for too much longer.
Right. Wonderful. I think you have some questions.
We have a couple of questions here and just a couple of moments remaining. Mayor, what can we do to keep businesses from leaving to Northern Virginia? It's bumping there.
I never go to Northern Virginia, so I don't know what you're talking about. In all seriousness, we have focused on, and we will continue to focus on the things that we're good at. There are some things that they're going to be good at in a business's eyes that we're not trying to follow. But there are other things like having a fair and predictable business environment. we have to do better at in DC. So I think we can all be helpful in making sure. You asked me earlier about how the development community can support housing and support development. And quite frankly, think everybody needs to be talking to DC residents in one form or another. In the neighborhoods where you live, the community associations that you're on, the ANC commissioners, your council members, all talking about what it is that you do and how we're partners. It's been strange to me over the years that it's kind of this negative view of developers, in not a negative view of the grocery stores, not a negative view of the retail centers or the beautiful affordable housing projects. So I think there just has to be more discussion with communities about how we work together to deliver what they want. On the other kind of the business environment, I need you to engage with all of your associations in advocacy around issues that our policymakers make every day that affect our business environment. And the other is when we say, listen, I will say from time to time, I need these tools in my toolbox to go out and compete for this business or that business, and making sure our policymakers understand why we need to compete or offer incentives or this tax break or why we need to use this piece of public land. All of those things, I think, require constant advocacy at City Hall.
Mayor, we know that you're sending a delegation to ICSC very soon, and that you're, as an administration, you've been great on economic development and pulling office and retailers and other kinds of businesses into the district. What are the kinds of office or retail folks that you'd be looking to attract to DC through efforts like ICSC and similar efforts?
Well, I actually haven't sat down with the team yet to get our strategy. We've done pretty well, I see, at getting the retailers that we want. We just don't have them everywhere that we want. And so that is what we continue to talk about. In the last 4 years, we've gotten 2 Starbucks to locate east of the Anacostia River. And those are the result of lots of conversations at ICSC. We want more grocers east of the river. We would love to see Shoppers Food Warehouse reverse some of their decisions and come back to our market. We think there's going to be outstanding opportunities for them. In terms of our office users, we of course have a life sciences push. We've made some grants to anchor institutions in DC to make sure that they're helping us build the infrastructure, so we are attracting more companies that are involved in health technology. Just as an example, financial technology, but everything involving starting here, locating here, and using our business, our existing business infrastructure in tech. I think it's going to be very important.
Ernie, I'll toss it to you for the concluding question if you have one, but Mayor, I just want you to accept on behalf of Bisnow our very best luck in November.
Thank you. June. So let's start there.
And a concluding question, nothing to do with politics.
Okay.
Being the mayor is a 24/7 job.
Yep.
What does Mayor Bowser do when she can just have the phone not ring for 5 minutes, if that ever happens? What parts of the city do you like to go? I know that's a dumb question, all 8 wards. Do you go, and do you have a favorite park, or do you have a favorite place, or what's your happy place in the District of Columbia?
I do, and I live close to Rockery Park, and I love the trails. And I think a lot of people have, during this kind of modified work lifetime, discovered outdoor activities. I hadn't had a bike since I was in high school. I bought a bike and started riding my bike and used the trails. So I love that. I love trying new restaurants and different restaurants around the city. But I just kind of like being in my backyard. And I did discover TV during COVID. And I hadn't really watched that many shows, but then I learned what everybody was talking about with Ozark and Yellowstone, if you haven't seen that. So if you ever need to turn off your brain, I sometimes do that.
Mayor Bowser, on behalf of the Washington biking community, thank you for everything you've done with Beach Drive, by the way. It's it's a gem of our city. It's
Thank
magnificent.
You. Thank you.
Just a huge round of applause.
Thank you.
Mayor Bowser, thank you.
everybody.
And to Ernie Jarvis,